Pets remember everything. Tiny, furry auditors with long grudges and impeccable timing. This gets worse. 1. I once told my cat we were cutting back on treats, like he was a line item in a budget meeting. He blinked, filed it under crimes, and waited. 2 nights later, I'm hosting a very important Zoom. Boss, clients, the whole gallery of judgy rectangles. At 9:01 p.m., Sir Whiskers leaps onto my desk with the theatrical grace of a Shakespearean villain, nudges my water glass to the brink, and, eyes locked with mine, tilts it directly into the Wi-Fi router. Silence. My video freezes in a face that says, yes, I did steal office supplies. Meeting dies. Client emails. Let's circle back when your internet is more stable. The cat then sits, back to me, tail flicking like a metronome set to humiliation. I apologize with 3 treats and a new router. He accepts both, then naps on the router box like a war trophy. Message received, budget cuts go both ways. 2. Dogs don't plot, they calendar. Mine hates baths with the kind of passion usually reserved for courtroom dramas. After a particularly soapy incident, oatmeal shampoo, baby talk, the whole degrading spectacle, he trotted away with suspicious calm and disappeared. Hours later, I found him in my closet, very busy with a single specific item, my passport. Not my shoes, not the couch, not the mail, just the one document that stood between me and a non-refundable flight. He shredded precisely the photo page, like a tiny, judgmental paper shredder with a grudge. The timing? Impeccable. Flight in 36 hours. I'm at the passport office explaining teeth marks to a federal employee who has seen everything and yet is visibly delighted by my misfortune. Meanwhile, my dog lounges at home, freshly unbathed, smelling faintly of Triumph and oatmeal. I reschedule the trip, the bath, and my life. He gets a new chew toy shaped like a rubber passport. He smiles with his eyes. 3. Parrots are voice memos with wings, and mine is basically an unpaid smart speaker hacker. I didn't teach him Alexa. He learned it during a podcast. One afternoon, I'm in the kitchen, and from the living room comes the crisp, flawless command. Alexa, add 40 pounds of pistachios to cart. I sprint like a linebacker. Too late. Order placed. 2 days later, my porch looks like a nut-based warehouse. I try to return them. The delivery guy asks, "Party?" I say, "Parrot." He nods like, classic. The bird watches me haul boxes inside and says, perfectly, "Good boy." It doesn't stop there. He starts testing his power. Alexa, play Baby Shark. Loop, Volume 10. I apologize to the neighbors with pistachios. Eventually, I change the wake word to something obscure. He listens, thinks, then says it back flawlessly. Because of course he does. I now live in a house governed by a beak with admin privileges and a taste for salted snacks. 4. Somewhere in rural Kentucky, a farmer became briefly famous for training his rooster to attack delivery trucks. The truth was less training and more consequence. The bird had once been startled by a UPS driver in bright orange shorts and apparently decided that shade of fabric was now his sworn enemy. For 2 full years, every time a truck so much as slowed near the property, this rooster would sprint out like a feathery torpedo of vengeance. Drivers began using binoculars to scope the driveway before daring to approach. One even started leaving packages at the end of the road with a note, "Too scared of Carl." That's right, his name was Carl. Carl the combat rooster. Eventually, the farmer put a reflective vest on him labeled security. The attacks didn't stop. They just became official policy. Carl became a viral hero and now lives in semi-retirement, still patrolling for suspicious vans and the occasional unlucky pizza guy. 5. Goldfish have the memory span of about 3 seconds, unless they're your emotional support animal. A college student once tried to register her goldfish as a service pet, arguing it helped with her anxiety. The school's housing board, likely exhausted from too many ferret-related incidents, just sighed and approved it. The student proudly carried her fish around campus in a portable bowl she called the emotional aquarium. Her professors humored her. The fish, of course, just stared. One day she forgot the bowl in the sun. The water started warming up, and by the time she returned, the emotional support had transitioned to emotional trauma. She held a dorm-wide memorial service complete with candles and a Spotify playlist titled Ocean of Tears. The fish was buried in a Pringles can. The next semester, the university added a line to the housing contract. All aquatic emotional support animals must be refrigerated. 6. Dolphins are the frat boys of the ocean. Smart, charming, and constantly in trouble. In 1965, NASA actually funded a project to teach one to speak English. A researcher named Margaret had to live in a flooded house with her dolphin roommate, Peter. For months, she read him books and tried to teach him phrases like ball and hello. Instead, Peter learned horny. I'm not kidding. The project had to be shut down because he wouldn't stop expressing affection during lessons. NASA quietly backed out and said they'd reevaluate interspecies communication. Translation, they ghosted the dolphin. The experiment is still cited today as proof that humanity might not be ready for intelligent alien life, because we already failed to communicate with one in flip-flops. 7. In 2018, an emotional support peacock named Dexter made international headlines after his owner tried to board a United Airlines flight with him. She'd bought him a seat, a whole seat. United politely declined, citing logistical and safety concerns, which is corporate code for, "We're not cleaning up peacock poop at 30,000 feet." Dexter strutted through Newark Airport like a feathered diva, refusing to leave. Passengers gathered to take selfies. He screamed, a sound halfway between a trumpet and a meltdown, and instantly trended online. Within hours, "Wapru, peacock denied" became a movement. Airlines panicked and started banning everything with feathers longer than 6 inches. Dexter retired to Brooklyn, where he lives in an artist's loft and occasionally poses for influencer photo shoots. He may have never flown commercially, but he's still more famous than most frequent flyers. 8. Cows are not known for rebellion. Until 2006, when one from Poland decided she was done with the meat industry and went full action hero. While being loaded into a truck, she broke through a metal fence, sprinted across a field, and dove into a nearby lake. When rescuers followed in a boat, she swam, yes, swam, to an island in the middle. Attempts to capture her failed miserably. They sent police. She kicked one of them so hard his rifle fell into the water. Eventually, locals just started bringing her food and declared her a symbol of freedom. Newspapers called her the cow who escaped slaughter. She lived peacefully on that island for years, becoming a vegetarian folk legend. Moral of the story, never underestimate 1/400 pounds of quiet determination and a very solid backstroke. 9. Penguins look like tiny butlers, and some of them act like it too, impossibly dignified, until they get their beaks on shiny objects. At an Antarctic research station, crews kept losing small gear, washers, bottle caps, the occasional silver carabiner. They blamed wind. Then a biologist followed a penguin waddling like a jewel thief and found a stash, a hidden nest lined with prestige items, all glittery enough to impress a mate. Penguins trade pebbles as romantic currency, but this guy had moved into luxury commodities. When researchers tried to reclaim the loot, he protested with loud brays and a dramatic flop, as if fainting in Victorian outrage. The team surrendered a few trinkets to keep the peace. Lesson learned: lock up anything shiny or risk it getting fenced by a tuxedoed bachelor who pays alimony in bottle caps and outwardly judges your fashion choices. 10. A Florida man once rescued a squirrel after a hurricane and then accidentally created the world's strictest personal security system. The squirrel bonded like a tiny, caffeinated bodyguard. Any visitor who approached the front porch got the full "who goes there?" treatment. Tail flicks, chirps, and sudden aerial assaults from the mailbox. Delivery guys learned to toss packages from a safe distance. The mailman started wearing a bike helmet. The owner tried to retrain his furry sentinel with walnuts and soothing podcasts. The squirrel listened, nodded, and then bit the doormat for stepping out of line. At Halloween, kids approached the house, read the handwritten sign, "Candy on chair, do not pet porch squirrel," and nodded like seasoned tour operators. The neighborhood eventually made peace by appointing the squirrel block captain. He accepted with a sunflower seed, then wrote a strongly worded letter to an oak tree. 11. Somewhere in Arizona, a pet tortoise named Linda engineered the slowest prison break in history. She lived in a nice backyard, ate strawberries, and occasionally glared at a hose. Over 3 years, she excavated a tunnel that would make a mole weep with pride. One leaf at a time, one patient scrape at dusk. When the big day came, she vanished. Her owners posted flyers. Weeks went by. Then the neighbor 3 houses down called, "Is your ottoman alive?" Linda had resurfaced in their yard looking smug and dusty, like a retiree who'd conquered Route 66 at 0.03 miles per hour. They patched the fence. Linda blinked, turned, and started a new tunnel 6 inches to the left. You don't stop a tortoise with setbacks. You only help her plan better. She's currently on year 2 of phase 2, the strawberry's taste of defiance. 12. Otters are adorable chaos wrapped in wet velvet. A coastal aquarium learned this the hard way when a juvenile otter discovered zipper technology. During feeding shows, he'd slip a paw through the keeper's vest and yoink whatever small items he could. Clickers, pens, a laminated schedule, once even a single car key that triggered a 4-hour parking lot scavenger hunt. The staff tried Velcro. He learned Velcro. They tried magnets. He learned magnets. A volunteer suggested decoy zippers sewn into a sacrifice vest. It worked for 3 glorious days until the otter, unimpressed with counterfeit hardware, demanded payment in the only currency that matters: live clams and tiny fish popsicles. Now the show includes a pre-negotiated tribute, and the otter, having unionized himself, clocks out precisely at snack's end. Audience applauds. Keeper checks pockets. Otter smiles like a raccoon at a jewelry store. 13. A pair of goats in Vermont became master locksmiths by accident. Their pen latch was a simple lift and slide, which is basically goat Sudoku. One afternoon, the farmer returned from lunch to find the herd calmly strolling down the lane, inspecting tractors like car buyers. He upgraded the latch. The goats upgraded their methodology. They learned leverage from a wobbly feed bucket and teamwork from pure mischief. Security escalated to a double carabiner clip plus a coded chain. The goats responded with what can only be described as a tiny goat crowbar, a chewed plank wedged at a perfect angle. After the 3rd jailbreak, the farmer admitted defeat and added a free-range hour every day at 3 p.m. The goats now clock in and out with eerie punctuality, as if filed by HR. Productivity soared. Fewer escapes, more naps. Management tip: schedule your chaos before it schedules you. 14. A Boston Terrier named Mabel understood capitalism better than anyone on her block. She learned that tricks equal treats, but only if the humans are emotionally compromised. So she invented fake limp Fridays. Every Friday evening, when her owners returned exhausted, Mabel would drag one paw, gaze upward with the soulful sadness of a 1950s diner ballad, and collect premium snacks plus a heated blanket on the couch. Saturday morning, fully healed. They took her to the vet. X-rays, perfect. The limp returned exactly 1 week later. They charted it. Fridays only. The vet laughed, then offered the diagnosis: operant conditioning. But, she conditioned you. The family changed tactics, rewarding only actual commands. Mabel pivoted to phantom doorbell, a single bark implying an intruder. Treat, bark, treat. Eventually, they replaced treats with applause and cuddles. Mabel accepted the new currency and bought a blanket with interest. 15. In a small Minnesota town, a black bear became a recycling influencer. He'd knock over blue bins, open only the ones with poorly rinsed jars, and leave the rest perfectly upright, like a passive-aggressive EPA auditor. Residents started competing for his approval by washing their containers to laboratory standards. One family filmed bin reveal night every Tuesday. Sparkling jars, 0 pizza residue. The bear, apparently pleased, stopped visiting their driveway, but continued to shame the neighbor with sticky pickle brine. The local paper dubbed him Compost Carl, and the city's contamination rate dropped 30%, not because of a campaign, but because nobody wanted a 400-pound sustainability coach glaring at their mayo lids. The bear eventually moved on, presumably to consult in the next town, but the habit stuck. Nothing cleans up a community like the possibility of ursine judgment at 2 a.m. 16. A pet ferret named Domino discovered a passion for home improvement, specifically HVAC. He could vanish for hours and return carrying mysterious screws, a plastic wheel, or, once, a USB drive from 2009. The apartment's airflow grew, weird. Vents hissed. The bedroom was Alaska. The hallway turned into Florida. A maintenance visit revealed Domino's masterpiece, a hidden cache in the return duct, 20 hair ties, 4 Lego heads, a rubber duck beak, 16 screws, and a retired Fitbit still tallying steps for a ghost. They rebalanced the system. Domino looked insulted, then began a new collection under the couch, focusing on high-end categories like Apple TV remotes and exactly 1 shoe from every pair. The owner bought vent covers. Domino bought bolt cutters in his dreams. In the end, they compromised. 1 official treasure box, emptied weekly, ceremonially praised. The HVAC now breathes easier. Domino's portfolio remains diversified. 17. Sea lions understand geometry better than anyone gives them credit for, especially the angle between tourist and snack. In a California harbor, one learned to station himself, exactly where fishermen filleted their catch and families posed for photos. He'd float just out of frame, head bobbing like a buoy with a business plan. When a parent said, "Smile," he'd rise, grin, and, time to the shutter, flip a fish skin into his mouth, ensuring he appeared in a dozen vacation albums as the world's happiest photobomber. When the harbor posted "Do Not Feed Wildlife" signs, he upgraded to marketing. He followed the sign painter around like a union steward, then parked beside the finished sign and stared at passing strollers until a guilty dad caved and accidentally dropped a sardine. The sea lion kept perfect hours, 11 to 4, rain or shine, like a retail associate with benefits. Eventually, the harbor named him an ambassador, which is a polite way of saying employee who is paid in partially digested anchovies. 18. A rescue raven named Edgar turned one quiet library into a security puzzle. He lived with a librarian who brought him to work for socialization. Within a week, small mysteries surfaced, pencils vanished, the "Quiet Please" placard moved, and the motion sensor sync turned on whenever someone approached the copier. The culprit was a glossy black magician. Ravens can mimic and tinker, and Edgar adored cause and effect. He learned the staff bathroom code from the beeping pattern and started letting himself in to splash dramatically in the sink like it was a Vegas residency. He hid overdue notices in the potted ficus, then replaced them with paper clips bent into mysterious runes, which, upon closer inspection, spelled nothing but felt deeply literary. Patrons loved him. The head librarian did not. A compromise followed. Edgar now works 2 days a week with an enrichment cart stocked with puzzle boxes and decoy pencils. Fines dropped because nothing motivates on-time returns like the feeling a bird is judging your Dewey Decimals. 19. Bees run a monarchy powered by spreadsheets. Ask any backyard beekeeper who thought, "How hard could it be?" and then watched 60,000 airborne accountants inspect their performance. One suburban dad bought a hive to teach the kids about nature. The bees taught him logistics. They outgrew their frames, swarmed to a neighbor's maple like a slow-motion thundercloud, and selected a new home, his Weber grill. Emergency calls were made. A local beekeeper arrived wearing what looked suspiciously like a hazmat suit and a calm smile, vacuumed the cluster into a ventilated box like a gentle bank heist, and lectured about nectar flows, queen cells, and why you never schedule a family barbecue during peak swarm season. The dad nodded, bought 3 more boxes, and now speaks in seasonal calendars. We're feeding syrup through April. Tulip poplar hits in May. The kids learned plenty, chiefly that Dad now bows to the only HOA that matters, her omnipotent apis. 20. A clever border collie named June ran a freelance logistics company out of a First Midwest farm. Her job was bring the sheep. Her interpretation was optimize throughput. Traditional herding involves sweeping arcs. June preferred brutal efficiency, cutting the flock into subgroups by temperament. The sprinters, the ditherers, and the philosophers. 3 ewes who refused to consider movement until they'd stared at a fence for 90 seconds. She cut, merged, and rerouted like a canine air traffic controller, occasionally pausing to glare at a particularly opinionated ram as if to say, "Sir, this is a Wendy's." One day, the ATV died mid-move. June expanded her responsibilities, gently prodding the farmer himself down the hill because a stuck human is just a sheep with pockets. By fall, the farm ran on June's standard time. Visitors cooed. What a good dog. The farmer nodded, paid her in tennis balls, and admitted she was technically his supervisor. 21. Pigeons are urban consultants in tiny suits. In one downtown plaza, a flock figured out the lunch crowd's schedule better than the building concierge. They ignored joggers, ignored tourists, and focused on badge-wearing office workers whose salads contained croutons and life regrets. The pigeons learned to stand exactly 3 feet from the recycling bin, staring with the gravity of tiny judges. The moment a lid lifted, they surged like a gray tide and extracted premium carbs before gravity finished its sentence. A new facilities manager tried spiky ledges and owl decoys. The pigeons held a meeting, declared the owls actors, and perched on their heads. Only when the company installed sealed, foot-pedal bins did the flock yield. Even then, one bird worked the pedal like a sous chef. In the annual tenant survey, under amenities, several people listed pigeons with personality. The building now budgets for bird-safe bins and thicker skin. 22. A capybara at a small zoo became a bathtub influencer. Visitors loved the daily soak and snack, where an attendant filled a cedar tub and sprinkled orange slices like a citrus spa. One rainy Tuesday, the attendant called in sick and management skipped the soak. The capybara did not skip anything. He waddled to the hose, nudged the valve with his nose, and, after several comedic failures, achieved a steady stream. He then dragged a traffic cone under the spigot with surprising hip strength, creating a private waterfall. Guests applauded as he reclined like a Roman senator, chewing peel first because he is a chaos deity. The zoo pivoted fast, branded Cappy Spa towels in the gift shop, a chalkboard menu, today's soak rain-infused orange, and a rotating playlist of elevator bossa nova. Attendance rose 18%. The capybara got extra sweet potatoes and the quiet, satisfied look of a mammal who negotiated better benefits without a single meeting. 23. An elderly macaw named Gloria taught a retirement home to tell time without clocks. She'd lived with jazz musicians, a dentist, and one patient kindergarten teacher. Her vocabulary was eclectic. At precisely 6:55 a.m., Gushai, she barked places like a frazzled stage manager. At noon, soup's hot, sit down, you're beautiful. At 3 p.m., in a perfect Midwestern mom cadence, Coates, we're leaving, which triggered 3 residents to stand and shuffle toward the door every single day. Staff mapped their routines to Gloria's cues, and missed meds plummeted because a parrot yelling, "Pills, Jerry?" cuts through television like a siren. Once, during a fire drill, the alarm failed. Gloria didn't. "Out, out, out, out," she repeated until everyone was on the lawn, where she followed up with, "Where's my purse?" The director wanted to add her to payroll but settled for a plaque. Gloria, Operations. Her wage was sunflower seeds and universal acclaim. 24. Somewhere in Washington state, a herd of elk discovered roundabouts. Highway construction rerouted a country road into a neat circle, and the elk, curious and easily amused, adopted it as a nightly marching track. Dashcams captured the spectacle, 15 hulking animals entering at the proper yield, circling twice like they were reading the directions, then exiting single file at the same point, satisfied that nothing had changed in the universe. Locals began timing their commutes to Elk O'Clock for the free show. The county installed signage, LK crossing also elk merging, and a wildlife biologist suggested the animals enjoyed the predictable sightlines. A teenager tried to join the parade on a skateboard and was politely glared off the asphalt by a cow with PTA energy. In a world of chaos, the elk embraced infrastructure. The road crew, baffled but flattered, painted tiny hoof icons as a joke. The elk ignored them because they already knew the rules. 25. An octopus at a coastal seafood restaurant's display tank discovered the employee key fob system and became, briefly, the night manager. He'd watch the last busser lock up, wait for the lights to drop, then lift the tank lid with 3 arms while 2 others unscrewed the aerator cap like a seasoned line cook. Security footage showed him sliding across stainless steel, testing sinks, and, this is the part that made corporate nervous, turning off the soda fountain with eerie precision. He wasn't vandalizing, he was exploring workflows. One night he found a GoPro, recorded 8 minutes of ceiling tiles and triumphant blorps, then returned to the tank before the opener arrived. The staff responded by octopus-proofing the lid with carabiners and a brick. He responded by moving the brick. After a détente, read shrimp bribe, the restaurant added a sign, "Please do not tap the glass. He is evaluating your technique." Tips improved. So did the lid hardware. 26. A raccoon in a garden apartment complex learned modern access control like a petty thief with a software internship. He started with the doggy door, easy. Then he leveled up to the keypad gate, studying tenants' finger patterns from the shadows until he could boop the most smudged digits in the right order, like a furry codebreaker. Inside, he specialized protein bars, peanut butter, and, mysteriously, 1 sock from every pair. The building manager installed motion lights. The raccoon treated them as paparazzi. They added a ring camera. He posed. A fed-up tenant set out a decoy bait kitchen with an unlocked mini-fridge and a sacrificial jar of Skippy. The raccoon took the peanut butter, then closed the fridge door, as if to say, "I was never here." Eventually, they hired a wildlife tech who reprogrammed the gate and passed out lockable pet doors. The raccoon moved to the next block, where, according to neighborhood gossip, he is now consulting. 27. At a cat cafe downtown, one heavyweight tabby named Harold ran timekeeping with the precision of a union foreman. Guests paid by the hour, Harold enforced it. 5 minutes before your slot ended, he would appear on your table, plant himself between you and your latte, and fix you with a look that said, "Wrap it up, champ." If you lingered, he escalated to gentle paperwork, sitting squarely on your receipt. Repeat offenders got the pen drop. Harold would knock your pen off the table, wait, and knock it again, a metronome of judgment. Staff swore they hadn't trained him. He'd just mapped the rhythm of the room and monetized it. When a rival cafe opened, Harold upped his retention tactics, guiding late-stage customers to the merch shelf and flopping onto the tote bags like a living limited-time banner. Revenue graphs spiked at the exact moments Harold worked the floor. Management called him our best closer. He asked for payment in rotisserie chicken and naps. 28. A miniature therapy horse named Biscuit joined a co-working space as part of a wellness pilot and accidentally became head of facilities. His job, in theory, was morale. In practice, he enforced posture. If you hunched, he'd sidle up and nudge your elbow until you unshrimped. If you doom-scrolled, he'd park his warm face on your forearm until you typed something that looked like work. Biscuit learned the elevator, the break room hours, and one cardinal truth: meetings end faster when a horse is staring. The Slack status, "Watch to Biscuit Wear," is now the most active channel, with timestamps like "Biscuit at Pod C" vibes strong. When the fire alarm glitched during a test, he calmly walked to the stairwell and led an orderly, oddly cheerful evacuation. The building offered him a branded safety vest. He accepted, then refused to wear it on Fridays because he recognizes casual dress policy. Productivity rose, so did carrot expenses. 29. Golf course geese are usually chaos. One gander, however, became a marshal. He stationed himself on hole 7, a short par 3 with a slow drip bottleneck, and developed an intolerance for dawdling. Groups who stood debating club choice got a stern honk and a purposeful waddle toward their ankles. Slow putters earned a theatrical wing flap that translated to "pick it up." Players complained, until they realized pace of play improved by 12 minutes on average. The superintendent posted a sign, "Hole 7, Assistant Ranger, do not feed." The gander ignored the sign and demanded grapes from anyone who carded a double bogey. When a swaggering foursome tried to chase him, he led them into a cleverly marshy patch and watched them sink ankle-deep, then returned to his tee box post like a tiny union boss. The course briefly considered adding a second goose to hole 12, but legal counsel asked, "Are you prepared for 2 marshals?" They were not. 30. On a tourist beach, hermit crabs created a housing market so efficient it would make Zillow blush. Every afternoon, as the tide fell and flip-flops flapped, a chain of crabs formed a semicircle around a coveted empty shell. The largest tried it first, spun like a contractor inspecting a remodel, then either kept it or stepped aside, triggering a cascade of upgrades down the line. Crab A moves into shell B, crab B into shell C, until a single tiny crab happily squirmed into the starter home everyone else had outgrown. Tourists squealed. One child donated a bright blue bottle cap. A crab wore it like a custom bungalow until a wave flipped him like modernist furniture. A local naturalist started a shell library with drilled human-made beads to discourage plastic renovations. The crabs didn't sign any paperwork, but participation soared. It turns out even crustaceans prefer good bones and walkable tide pools. 31. A small-town warehouse swore it had a ghost supervisor. Night shift errors plummeted, not because of new training, but because a great horned owl moved into the rafters and conducted audits with yellow-eyed disdain. The forklift guys named him Auditor. He'd hoot exactly once at 2 a.m., which the crew took as stretch break o'clock, then patrol the aisles, silent as a rumor, landing on aisle 14 when someone stacked a pallet like a game of Jenga with trust issues. Word spread, "Don't embarrass yourself in front of the owl." Management leaned in, installed perchy beams, replaced a cracked dock light, and added "Check with Auditor" to the whiteboard as a joke. OSHA walkthrough? Best score in years. When the HVAC misfired, Auditor relocated to receiving, and the error rate followed him like a KPI. A new hire asked, "Do we pay him?" The foreman shrugged. In mice and respect. 32. At an aquarium's touch tank, a stingray named Gladys discovered comedic timing and made a part-time job of humbling footwear. She learned to recognize the squeak of rubber clogs and the tromp of heavy boots, then launched precision splashes that soaked only the loudest shoes. Sneakers? Fine. Stilettos on a field trip? Reserve judgment. But clogs got the wave. Guests yelped, laughed, and posted videos. Attendance rose for the NBA Splash Zone. and retail moved a suspicious number of branded socks. Trainers tried to outsmart her by varying feeding times. Gladys adjusted her schedule like a salaried professional with an Outlook calendar. When a VIP tour came through in quiet loafers, she surfaced, peeked, and gave a single approving ripple, as if granting a fashion note. The aquarium added a sign, "Please respect the rays and consider your footwear choices." Gladys continued her work, the unsalaried arbiter of squeak, dampening egos and clogs with equal enthusiasm. 33. An elephant at a Thai rescue park developed a side hustle, produce kleptocracy with customer service. Her name was Dara, and she'd learned the snack stand's entire workflow. Guests bought baskets of fruit at a counter, then crossed a small footbridge to feed the elephants. Dara stationed herself beside the bridge like a velvet rope bouncer, trunk casually draped over the rail, eyes soft, brain calculating. If a tourist held the basket tight, she'd give a polite trunk tap and a quiet rumble that sounded suspiciously like, "Ma'am." If someone looked nervous, the trunk zipped in, liberated a single banana, and placed it, this is the criminal genius part, back into the hands of a smaller elephant behind her, as if to say, "See? Charity." Staff tried to outwit her by moving the stand. Dara responded by learning the new route, then discovered the hand pump for the nearby rinse station, operating it with 3 rhythmic pulls to blast water at anyone who smuggled grapes past her checkpoint. She wasn't stealing. She was auditing the fruit supply chain, with hydraulic enforcement and perfect public relations. 34. In a downtown light rail station, one rat became a transit etiquette consultant. He lived in the gap under the platform bench and emerged only for specific offenses: dropped chips, abandoned coffee cups, or the ultimate sin, popcorn on the floor. He'd scuttle out, grab a kernel, then climb onto the offender's shoe and stare up with grim, whiskered disappointment until they picked up the mess. Commuters learned fast. Someone spilled M&Ms, the rat stacked them color-sorted and left a precise line pointing toward the trash can like a sugary crime scene arrow. A conductor dubbed him Sergeant Sweep. The transit authority tested ultrasonic deterrence. Ridership complained. "Leave the little janitor alone." They pivoted, installing more bins and signs that read, "Please don't make Sergeant Sweep work overtime." Teenagers tried to lure him with fries. He refused, choosing only what you should have thrown away. Eventually, the platform stayed spotless, not because of policy, but because nobody wanted to get stared down by a rodent with a stronger moral compass than the afternoon rush. 35. On the edge of a desert state park, a small herd of wild burros took over traffic control with the composure of retired sheriffs. The park road had a single-lane choke point, where RVs met mountain bikers and common sense went to die. The burros solved it. Each morning, just after sunrise, 2 animals stood shoulder to shoulder at the narrowest part, blocking both directions like a living toll booth, while a third ambled halfway up the hill to monitor. When a car eased forward, the lookout flicked an ear, and the pair opened a gap for exactly 1 vehicle. Then they closed ranks and waited. Minutes later, a vehicle from the other side got its turn. No honking, no aggression, just metered access enforced by stubborn geometry and a 1,000-yard stare. Rangers observed for a week, shrugged, and put up a sign, "Expect burro delays. They are doing their best." The system reduced fender benders to 0. Visitors rolled down windows to thank the donkeys. The burros accepted the praise, plus carrots, which is how the West was really won. 36. City squirrels run heists like they've watched too many caper films. In one botanical garden, a veteran trio, Scar, Nibbles, and the intern, perfected a picnic extraction plan rivaling airport logistics. Scar, missing a tuft of ear, played decoy, brazenly approaching the blanket to negotiate for a single chip. While cameras focused on his adorable audacity, Nibbles circled behind the target, dragging the zipper on the unattended tote exactly 3 inches, just enough to let the intern slip inside. The intern specialized in soft items, muffins, grapes, artisanal cheddar. If discovered, he'd freeze, clutching a croissant like a toddler caught with a cookie, then scuttle under the bench where Scar would accept the handoff and sprint along a fence rail to their distribution hub. An oak with a hollow big enough to store a brunch. Garden staff posted reminders, keep food secure, and upgraded to squirrel-resistant bins. The trio responded by timing raids to wedding photo sessions when humans were busiest smiling. Security finally surrendered and designated a squirrel-free zone, patrolled by a volunteer with a water mister. The squirrels treated it like a light drizzle in Paris and continued their work with umbrellas of indifference. 37. A harbor seal in Oregon discovered kayaks and the concept of ride share, in that he preferred to share yours. He'd glide silently beside the rental dock, then, as soon as a tourist pushed off, launch himself like a slippery cannonball into the rear well, instantly converting the boat into a two-mammal craft. Panicked paddlers spun. The seal looked offended, as if to say, "Excuse me, this is my commute." The rental company tried shooing him with gentle splashes. He returned with friends. They posted a sign, "Do not transport seals." The seal could not read, but he did recognize the bright orange dry bags that contained snacks. He learned to nuzzle the bag until the human laughed, took a photo, and drifted into the cattails. Eventually, the harbor partnered with wildlife officers to build a floating dock, the Seal Lounge, stocked with sunning logs and zero kayaks. It worked, mostly. On windy days, he still hopped aboard for warmth, resting his chin on a passenger's knee like a wet dog in a sweater. You don't argue with a 250-pound argument in a tuxedo. 38. A mounted police horse named Latte developed a brand loyalty that altered a city's patrol pattern. Each morning route passed 3 cafes. Latte would slow near one, tilt his head toward the awning, and snort until his rider relented. Inside, the baristas had a ritual: a scoop of plain oats and a paper cup with 2 ice cubes, his cold brew. Tourists took photos. The precinct took notice when community interactions doubled on Latte days. The captain, a numbers guy, mapped it. Crime reports didn't change, but goodwill did. So they made it policy: 15 minutes of coffee with a horse. Latte, feeling powerful, began rating latte art by snuffling approval or pointedly ignoring it. One overconfident cafe tried to win his heart with a cinnamon-scented oat cookie. Latte sneezed on the display case like a Michelin critic delivering a devastating review. The cafe adjusted recipes. Latte forgave them. Urban policing improved, 1 oat scoop at a time. 39. A museum adopted a cat for mouse control and accidentally hired an alarm system with opinions about lasers. The education team loved using laser pointers during school tours to highlight artwork details. The cat loved lasers more. At the first red dot, he launched from a bench like a furry missile, rocketed across parquet floors, and skidded under a degas with all 4 paws splayed. Docents tried to adapt: slower dots, smaller dots, whispered dots. The cat adapted faster, lurking behind pedestals like a tiny panther, ready to pounce the instant photons betrayed themselves. Administration drafted a red dot policy: no pointers outside glassed galleries, and issued stylish wooden wands like conductor's batons. The cat, thwarted, pivoted to security. He began napping in doorways that shouldn't be open and meowing at unattended bags, earning 2 good catches and a staff badge. Mr. Whisk, preventive conservation. During the gala, he patrolled the hors d'oeuvres table, deterring both mice and guests who confused canapes for dinner. Art was preserved. Pride, less so. 40. Goat yoga sounds peaceful until you meet a herd with entrepreneurial spirit. A studio on the edge of town ran sunset sessions in a lavender field, photogenic, fragrant, and wildly optimistic. The goats learned the choreography faster than the humans. On Downward Dog, they climbed spines like mountain trails. On Child's Pose, they nested on yoga mats as if reclaiming birthright terrain. One charismatic weather, Steve, noticed that people squealed louder and tipped more when he wore outfits. He began dragging the costume bin to the gate before class. Tiny bandanas, a sequined cape, inexplicable sunglasses. Instagram exploded. Then the goats unionized in their way. If apples weren't sliced at exactly 6:55 p.m., the herd staged a flakeout, all 12 animals simultaneously collapsing into blissful hay naps mid-session, while guests knelt awkwardly, reaching for enlightenment and a good angle. Management negotiated: earlier apple slices, fewer sunglasses, optics matter, and a designated no-hoof zone for beginners. The goats agreed, then raised rates by 2 Cheerios per head. Serenity returned, branded, photographed, and lightly head-butted. 41. Airport beagles don't care about your vacation diet. They enforce agriculture law with the zeal of tiny auditors. One beagle at LAX, let's call him Milton, mapped Terminal 6 like a crime scene investigator. He ignored perfume, laptops, even a hamburger the size of a toddler's head. But the moment an apple crossed the threshold, Milton materialized, sat politely, and stared into your soul until you confessed your Fuji sins. His handler barely had to speak. Milton's accuracy was eerie. Apples, mangoes, unwashed shells, one time a salami disguised as a yoga bolster. Creative, but no. Travelers melted, took selfies, and surrendered snacks like they'd been read their rights. The USDA made him the face of a poster campaign. Kids recognized him like a Pixar character. Legend says he once sat in front of a TSA supervisor's bag and uncovered a contraband mango. The terminal applauded. The supervisor bought Milton a plush, squeaky apple. Justice, served warm and crunchy. 42. In a high-desert neighborhood, a pack rat turned one garage into a mid-century modern gallery. The homeowner kept losing small, shiny things: socket bits, a chrome valve cap, the stainless steel lid from a travel mug. He blamed the universe until a mechanic friend said, "Wood rats decorate." They found the gallery behind a stack of paint cans, a tidy alcove lined with gum wrappers, silver side out, beer tabs arranged like military medals, one prized hex key standing upright like a sculpture. The pack rat had even curated lighting, shards of CD reflecting sunbeams into the display at 4 p.m. daily. Returning the loot didn't work. New pieces appeared overnight, including a wedding band the neighbor didn't realize was missing yet. Negotiations began. The man offered trades, bottle caps for drill bits, mirror tiles for keys. Peace was achieved with a decoy museum box stocked with shiny freebies. Admissions skyrocketed. The pack rat still pilfered the occasional valve cap, a curator's tax. 43. Lighthouse keepers used to log weather and fog. A harbor cat named Briny logged vibes. She adopted the old light station after a storm, sleeping in a coil of rope like a nautical cinnamon roll. Volunteers noticed she had a schedule. Exactly 5 minutes before the foghorn test, she'd hop onto the console room's sill, stare down the channel, and flick her tail. On days when the fog rolled in fast, she trotted to the lantern room and meowed once, decisively. Horn. "Please!" The Coast Guard laughed, then noticed Briny's predictive accuracy beat their cheap sensor by a nose. Literally. School groups arrived for tours and got Briny's weather report first. When a summer intern left the equipment closet ajar, she meowed at it until someone locked it, preventing a field trip disaster. The station gifted her a tiny yellow slicker for photo ops. She refused because she's not a clown. She is management in fur. 44. Hospitals have automatic doors. Moose have curiosity. In Alaska, a bull discovered that if you stand in front of the sliding glass long enough, the lobby welcomes you like family. He visited on snow days, sauntering through to enjoy tropical potted plants and radiant heat like a spa membership holder. Security learned to treat him like a dignitary. Hold the elevator, kidding but barely, clear a path, announce on the PA, "Attention staff, our large ungulate guest is browsing cardiology." Patients peered over magazines as he examined a vending machine with deep spiritual interest. The hospital installed brush guards over the ficus. He shifted his attention to hand sanitizer dispensers, which, to be fair, are fun. Wildlife officers built a moose lounge just outside with salt lick and willow branches. He still drops by to supervise winter parka fashion, standing perfectly still until the doors whoosh and he can see himself in the glass. Self-care achieved. 45. At a zoo's great ape house, an orangutan named Margot understood vending machines better than the average intern. As enrichment, keepers provided a token-based feeder that dispensed frozen fruit when a disc was inserted. Margot reverse-engineered the economy. She started stockpiling discs under a burlap sack, trading them to junior males for prime lounging spots and to keepers for special browse. One afternoon, a guest dropped a quarter near the viewing glass. Margot tapped it, held it up, then tried the vending slot. No fruit. She studied the aperture, fetched a flat pebble, and sanded the quarter on the concrete until it resembled a token. It worked, once. The machine was upgraded. Margot upgraded faster, hoarding the new tokens and returning exactly one when the keeper presented the good bucket. Accounting noticed her redemption timing matched crowd spikes. Congratulations, you've been outmaneuvered by a copper-haired economist with a burlap bank and perfect market timing. 46. Window washers in a skyscraper thought pigeons were their biggest obstacle. Then the resident peregrine falcons gave a TED Talk on boundaries. During nesting season, every squeegee stroke near the 32nd floor ledge triggered a supersonic reprimand. The crew tried early hours. The falcons adjusted earlier. Safety installed reflective hawk silhouettes. The falcons perched on them like gargoyles wearing their own merch. A veteran washer proposed detente. Plush decoy pigeons clipped to a rig on the opposite face of the building to draw. Patrols away for 10-minute windows. Literally. It worked. The falcons strafed the decoys, the washers glided in, and both parties returned to work with dignity intact. HR asked if this was ethical baiting. Legal replied, "We're giving them a gym." By fall, the Falcons brought fledglings to scream training class against the glass, and the washers, grinning through ear protection, filmed the city's most intense internship program from 3 feet away. 47. Crows remember faces and repay debts, occasionally with interest. A Seattle block had a quiet feud: lost keys, a vanished AirPod, someone's missing bike light. A middle schooler who'd been feeding crows since 2nd grade decided to crowdsource. She set up a tray labeled "Lost," sprinkled peanuts around it, and waited. The crows arrived like black-suited consultants. Within a week, the tray displayed a curated mess: pull tabs, shiny screws, a key fob. Then came a miracle: a single AirPod, left, ceremoniously placed next to a bread twist tie bow. Neighbors added photos of missing items. The crows, recognizing the one thing humans respect, laminated signage, began delivering with purpose. A man got his bike light back after 2 days. He cried, which embarrassed everyone. The HOA tried to shut the feeding down. The entire street revolted, citing municipal partnerships. The city eventually installed a sanctioned crow exchange with a canopy and a tiny plaque. The crows ignored the plaque and kept using the tray. They're anti-bureaucracy, pro-peanut. 48. In a mountain town with tourism trash problems, a black bear became the dumpster compliance officer nobody asked for, but everybody needed. The county issued bear-proof cans with a simple carabiner latch. Humans, predictably, forgot to clip them. The bear, a broad-shouldered genius dubbed Inspector Podry, learned the latch in 2 attempts and, just to prove a point, began closing cans after midnight if he found them open. Bang, clip, snort, then moving on without rating. Trail cams caught him inspecting rows like a night shift manager, pausing at repeat offenders' addresses to shake the bin once, a warning knock. When a rental cabin left fish scraps in a loose bag, he dragged the entire mess to their porch, set it neatly by the door, and tipped the bin upright as if filing a report. The town leaned in, laminated tags reading past, warned appeared on handles, and compliance shot up. People behaved better not out of fear, but because they didn't want to disappoint the bear who believed in them. Which creature deserves a promotion? Nominate your chaos champion in comments.